Thanks for choosing this free Anfield Index podcast. If you'd prefer to listen to this or any of our other shows without adverts, then now's the time to check out Anfield Index Pro. With AI Pro, you can supercharge your entire listening experience. You'll not only get all of our podcasts without the ads, but you'll have them far faster with our Quick Publish feature available exclusively for subscribers. AI Pro also puts you in the heart of our sound studio, with an option to listen to many of our shows live and interact with the podcasters in real time as the shows are recording. Upgrading couldn't be easier. AI Pro is available on all popular podcast platforms, and we have our own apps for Apple and Android. Just head on over to AnfieldIndexPro.com and get started today.
Hello and welcome back to Rival Recon here on Anfield Index Pro. The Reds continue to wade through their ongoing identity crisis. However, a comfortable 2-0 win over Rangers in midweek finally saw a change in shape from Klopp. A change that could perhaps be the way forward if Liverpool are set to rediscover their top form this season. On this week's pod, we're looking ahead to this Sunday's game and what will no doubt be a very stern test of whether Liverpool can shake themselves out of their recent funk. As the Reds head to North London to take on league leaders, Arsenal. Joining me on the pod today to share his views on the progression the Gunners have made under Arteta this season and how well new signings have settled so far, I'm happy to welcome on football journalist Adam Clancy. Welcome on, Adam.
Thank you very much. Thanks for having me.
Good to speak with you. Like when this fixture rolls round, whether it's away, whether it's at home, it's always particularly sort of relevant one for me. Having grown up in North London, lost of my family, the WhatsApp chats come alive like this time of season, like they don't do at any other point during the season usually. Although actually, I think given how well Arsenal have started this campaign off, it's been pretty lively in there anyway. So I've got a lot of riding on this even before we dive into the discussion. But I just wanted to, before we get into this season, how well Arsenal started it and maybe some of the particular points around sort of why things have gone so well. I just wanted to ask you, I spoke with Phil Costa around sort of Arsenal in pre-season, spoke a little bit about how last season ended and sort of the taste that was left in your mouth really. And I just wanted to ask you, how were you thinking given how last season ended where sort of just teams sort of ran out of gas a little bit, and how hopeful were you at the start of this one?
Yeah, that's a good point. At the end of last season, of course, it was disappointing in the end to be so close to that Champions League spot. We haven't been there for, I think, 6 seasons now, and we're absolutely craving it as fans. We all want it back at the Emirates, and just to lose out by a couple of points, especially to your biggest rivals, was really disappointing in the end. But I like to think that the end of the season shouldn't really tail off how well of a season we actually had. I think we had a good season overall. Before the season started, I don't think any sort of realistic Arsenal fan would have expected us to qualify for the Champions League because of the back-to-back 8th-place finishes, and Mikel Arteta's job was actually in jeopardy at the start of the season because we'd lost our opening 3 games and we were bottom of the league and Tottenham were top of the league, and it wasn't good times being an Arsenal fan. But yeah, we blended a lot of good young players into the team. Like Saka got much more game time under his belt. Same with Emil Smith-Rowe. We got such a young, exciting team at the moment that the sky's the limit with this team. And I think the main thing about last season was just trying to get the fans back on side more than anything. I think Mikel Arteta did a good job with that. We had a lot of good times at the Emirates. Our football was a lot more exciting than it was the season before. During the COVID season, we really struggled to score goals. We really struggled to create chances. And in that season, we only pretty much found out about Emil Smith-Rowe when he was pretty much forced into the team because Willian wasn't performing for us. He's gone now, obviously, but
wow, yeah, Willian. Remember those days?
Yeah. He was signed to be our new attacking midfielder, and he had a brilliant first game against Fulham. Got a couple of assists, but yeah, the less said about Willian, the better, really. And young Emil Smith-Rowe came in, and he did very, very well for a teenager at the time to come into that side, and with Saka next to him as well. Obviously Martinelli and now they're all forming part of the first team, and I think overall, despite the disappointing end, I think we had a good season, and just to get back into Europe, I think was the main aim for us, and we did that, and now we're really reaping the rewards, I think, from this season.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think you touch upon a couple of interesting things there around sort of the fact that there's so many young, exciting players in the team, and sort of they were the real key players for you guys. I guess that sort of gave everybody, the hope. I mean, firstly, when you're watching young players come through and play for your team, I think you always know that the audience are going to be much more on side, right? They're going to give the benefit of the doubt to these players. Some of them come through the academy as well. There's going to be a closer relationship, and the fact that they're so young and they're all so young together, gelling together, already just gives you optimism for sort of what they could do in the future. So I think it makes sense to me that even sort of with the disappointment of how last season ended, that fans would still be hopeful about what was going to come next. And then, I mean, looking at sort of the players who have come in and gone out then, I mean, we look at the departures. Nuno Tavares has gone on loan to Marseille, wasn't quite ready for the Premier League just yet. Nicolas Pepe gone to Nice. Lacazette, the old man of the team, headed on a free transfer to Lyon. Bellerin, after many, many years at the club, heads back to Barcelona. Leno over to Fulham. Lucas Torreira had sort of stunned that he was still on the books, to Galatasaray. Guendouzi, the fabled Guendouzi as well, off to Marseille. That's a lot. I probably left some players out there as well who've departed. But then coming through the door, I think especially relevant to talk about, right? Gabriel Jesus, Zinchenko, Vieira, Matty Turner, and there's a young right winger as well who came through from Sao Paulo, Marquinhos. And then, of course, the end of a loan, which feels like a big signing, especially given how he's done. So the second unveiling, if you will, a second coming of William Saliba, who I know we'll talk about as well. So, I mean, just in terms of the types of signings that the club had made there, what did you think of them? Even before they'd kicked the ball, what did you think of them? And what do you think it says about sort of the direction that the club is going in?
Well, first of all, I think each and every one of those signings, are really spot on, really on the mark for the club and what Arteta wants to do. I don't think it might have been a surprise at the time, but I don't think it was a surprise that he went to his old club, Man City, who it was pretty public that a couple of their players were unhappy with their game time, and Arteta took advantage of that, and being a good friend of Pep Guardiola's, he has kind of said to him, Jesus, he's unhappy at Man City, he wants more game time, he wants to be the leading striker for Brazil at the World Cup. We needed a strike desperately. Even last season, we needed a striker desperately. We let Aubameyang go, which was a big decision by Arteta. It was a brave decision, but he wasn't on form at the time, and was our highest earner, and he did have discipline issues, etc. Now it feels strange seeing him in the Chelsea shirt now, but he's let Aubameyang go, he's let Lacazette go, and we were left with poor Eddie Nketiah up front, who did very well towards the end of the season, but he was playing every game and he didn't really have much competition. So we knew we needed a striker. And as soon as we were linked with Gabriel Jesus, I mean, I think everyone was excited as an Arsenal fan because we've seen him play in the Premier League before. We know what he's about. he's an absolute pressing monster for a start. Like, forget his goals, forget his assists. He's an absolute pressing machine, and he's exactly the kind of player that Arteta likes. He's got that extra work rate, that extra energy. He's also got that Brazilian flair, and obviously we've got Edu as the technical director, and he's obviously helped a lot with that signing, evidently. And we're starting to build a nice little Brazilian contingent at Arsenal. And, Jesus, I think all the signings have shown a lot of promise, but Jesus, for me, has been the game changer. 5 goals, 3 assists in 8 games in the Premier League. All the talk is about Erling Haaland at the moment, and rightfully so, but for Man City to get Erling Haaland at the club, they probably had to let Jesus go, and we've been the beneficiaries. And I don't think it's a coincidence that we're the top 2 teams in the league at the moment because of that. And Zinchenko, he's had some injury problems at the moment, but he's been a breath of fresh air as well. He's keeping a good left back in Kieran Tierney out of the team. And, for years, not just last season, which I think was our biggest problem, but for years we've been complaining about squad depth and, when we lose key players, can players come off the bench and perform to the same level as those key players? And, to have Zinchenko and Tierney as your left back options. Fabio Vieira looks a very class player. He hasn't played much, but against Brentford especially, he ran the show, really. Very, very good. Very technical player. Again, a very Arsenal type player. He's going to do very well, I think, as well. And, he can understudy Ødegaard, but he could also push him as well. And this is what Arsenal fans have been wanting for years. We wanted this, this level of squad depth. And I don't think it's a surprise that Man City have won the league, for out the last 5 years. And I think as good as Liverpool have pushed them, I think just that extra little quality on the bench, that extra squad depth, is what's pushed City on. And I think we're, getting to that point now. We could do 1 or 2 more players, I think, but we're getting to that point now where our bench looks very strong. Loads of good players on the bench that we can bring on, and it's exciting times. But I can't fault the recruitment at all, and I think a lot of people do forget that we're not in the Champions League this season. So to get the calibre of players that we've got, especially, the likes of Jesus for a non-Champions League club, I think is exceptional business. I think we've done very, very well.
Yeah, you can tell sort of the club there sort of leveraging those relationships that existed between Arteta and those players who he'd obviously worked with beforehand, and obviously with Guardiola as well. It just looks like a great atmosphere, great environment for young players to come, improve themselves. Maybe some of them view it as that they'll as a stepping stone at this moment in time. But given how the club are actually playing, I mean, I'm sure they'll be reconsidering that perhaps as well. One player I want to touch on, and we'll come on to sort of talk about how the players have done so far this season, is William Saliba, right? I mean, this defender signed, loads of hype around him as well, then didn't play, out on loan, gone. But yet a frequent topic on Twitter, I used to see amongst Arsenal Twitter, about William Saliba. He's come back, and surely even if you were his sort of greatest fan, you wouldn't have predicted him to take to the league the way in which he has done so far, right?
No, that's very true. Obviously, I knew about Saliba when he was on loan, and winning. I think he won Young Player of the Year in France, and Marseille came second only to PSG. So he must have done well. I'll be the first to admit I didn't see much of him perform. I saw a couple of European games and I think the odd Ligue 1 game on BT Sport and that. So I can't say I wasn't, I watched him every single game and I was an expert. But I knew he had promise. He came from Saint Etienne. He partnered with Wesley Fofana, who's got a big money move to Chelsea. The French national team, every position but centre backs, like
stacked,
they seem to produce so many good young centre backs, absolutely unbelievable.
We got another one at ours, haven't we? Got Kanate over at ours as well. Yeah, they're absolutely loaded.
With Meccano, Jules Koundé, there's absolutely loads, and all playing for top teams in Europe. And and then you've obviously got Varane as well, who's been a mainstay and is still relatively young himself. You've got President Kimpembe from France and from PSG. So many good centre backs. But that's one thing, I guess, if you go away from Arsenal, that Saliba's now the starting centre back for France, which, considering how many players they've got in that position, is incredible. And it looks like he's going to be the starting centre back in the World Cup. And it's just testament to how good he's been. I mean, he's obviously received rave reviews, and rightly so. He's had a couple of Man of the Match awards. He's even scored a couple of goals for us as well. But
what kind of defender is he?
He's, dare I say it, because I don't want to obviously put pressure on his career, but he reminds me of a young Van Dijk.
There we go.
Van Dijk will get to see more of him in the flesh, obviously, on Sunday, but he's tall, but he's also very quick. I think the word that epitomizes Saliba is calmness. He's so calm on the ball. It's almost scary how cool he is on the ball for a player so young, especially in the Premier League, where the majority of teams play that pressing game now. With the way Guardiola and Klopp have introduced it, a lot of teams, rightfully so, want to copy them and want to copy their style. And even when players are rushing at him, when he's got 3 or 4 players around him, he always finds a way out somehow. And I think Liverpool will be a big test if Liverpool are on song, on point, and they're well up for it, and they play their normal pressing game. It'll probably be Saliba's biggest test so far in an Arsenal shirt. But I back him to get through it because he's an unbelievable defender for someone his age. And one other thing to note is that he's forced Ben White to play at right back, our £50 million signing. And while Ben White's doing a good job there, he's obviously a natural centre back, and you can't drop Saliba at the moment. You just can't drop him. And he's forced a £50 million player to come out of his position because he's been that good. And I think a lot of Arsenal fans knew he was a good player. He was a promising player, but I can't imagine any Arsenal fan can imagine how good he actually has been, or how good he looks in the flesh. He looks like a Rolls Royce, honestly.
Yeah, I mean, the Van Dijk comparison, as you mentioned, I think it's calm as you like. There's a reason why that's the chant for him. I think that's one of the things that's always been so noticeable about him. And I think you'll know that Saliba's got to the level Van Dijk is at when other teams, opposition fans, start counting sort of dribbles past him. I think that was the stage where it got to with Van Dijk, where I think Nicola Pepe, maybe, I can't remember who it was, but when somebody eventually dribbled past Van Dijk, it was like that online for weeks.
Actually, we Arsenal fans milked that for weeks. Yeah.
So that's when you'll know that sort of Saliba's reached the heady heights, and he's living rent free in people's heads for it. But he's had an outstanding start, and another player who's had an outstanding start that I wanted to mention is, and you've already talked about him, is Gabriel Jesus. Long sort of wondered how he would cope being the main man at a club like Arsenal. Some of the pressure on him, and I've been amazed by how fluid his role appears at times, and just how tenacious he's been. Clearly, this is a guy who, as you said, is desperate to be there, playing for his country at the World Cup. I think he's pretty much secured that he's going to be going at this stage. But I mean, just how I mean, it's clear that you rated him anyway before he signed for the club. But what surprised you about sort of the way in which he's taken to the team, taken to the new role as sort of the leading man? And I mean, how is he being deployed by Arteta?
Aside from his quality, I think the most surprising thing that struck me about Jesus is his technical ability, and that sounds quite strange because he's Brazilian. A lot of Brazilians do have those magical feet and those wonderful skills, but Jesus on the ball is one of the best technical players I think I've ever seen, and this is coming from an Arsenal fan who, seen the likes of Fabregas, Cazorla, Özil, all these top midfield players over the years, even before under Arsene Wenger, or all these great technical players. He's one of the best technical players I've ever seen in my life, honestly. That he dances with the ball, like with his feet. He's Samba Brazilian flair. I don't know how to explain it. You might see a couple of glimpses on Sunday, but he's so quick. He shifts the ball one side, then the other, and he makes defenders dizzy. I think I saw a stat today that him and Martinelli or something like that have completed the most dribbles in the Premier League this season. It just didn't surprise me. He's technically outstanding, and as I said before, he's got 5 goals, 3 assists in 8 games. He's contributing every game, and a lot of rival fans like to play down the start we've had, saying we haven't played a Liverpool, we haven't played a Man City yet. But honestly, we've made very good Premier League teams look very ordinary. And Jesus almost toys with each opponent he has. And in pre-season, it was exactly the same. I think his debut might have been his debut game. He scored 2 goals, I think, a couple of assists as well. And he's pretty much in the first minute or 2 of the game, he dribbled past something like 3 defenders, got to the byline, sort of cut inside and produced this wonderful finish. And straight away, I think Arsenal fans were in love with him. Like I think it was because we've been lacking that striker, that sort of complete striker for so long, that now he's come. He has the potential, honestly, to be, well, wherever he wants to be. He's only 25, which sounds crazy because he's been in the Premier League for so long. He was signed by Man City, I think, as a teenager. But he. I'm not saying he's going to be, as good as Henry or Dennis Bergkamp or even, likes of Van Persie before he went to United, like all these great strikers we've had. But he is up there. Honestly, he's up there. And yeah, for me, it's his work off the ball and his technical ability that stands out for me. Aside from his magical feet. Sorry, he's off the ball. He works so hard. Like he chases down lost causes. He's a pressing, as I said at the start, he's a pressing machine. He's a monster. He does not give anyone any time. Doesn't give any defenders any time. And when you've got Martinelli as well, he does the same thing. Like it's really, really good to watch, honestly.
Yeah, it's going to be very interesting to watch on Sunday as well. 'Cause I think obviously we'll come on to talk a little bit about Liverpool's struggles so far this season. It looks like there'll probably be a change in system as well, given what we saw against Rangers. But I think one of the things that we're seeing there is some of those players who are aging a little bit and maybe finding it a bit more difficult to. I mean, I think Henderson's always found it difficult to deal with being really pressed, really forced to play under pressure. But yeah, I'd be interested to see how Martinelli and Jesus, who they look to target. I'd be interested to see how they do that on the weekend as well. But one player I want to talk about, not a new signing, like a new signing, but given the places and the positions he's popping up in, goal-scoring midfielder Granit Xhaka. I just wanted to ask you. I mean, this has been a fascinating saga of any player, sort of any player's time at a club, I suppose, and he's really gone through it. The fact that he's now this goal-scoring midfielder making these late, intelligent runs into the box. I mean, what have you made of that transformation?
Honestly, it's surprised me because I mean, Arsenal fans are sort of used to the Granit Xhaka that sat, just in front of the defence, sort of got things ticking. I didn't realise how mobile of a player he can be. Because I think one of Xhaka's main criticisms in his early days at Arsenal was he was just too slow on the ball. He's a very good passer. He's never lost his passing ability, but he just seemed too slow on the ball, took too many touches, and that's where he got himself into trouble. He often found himself last man, picking up silly yellow cards. He's picked up 1 or 2 red cards as well. But in this new role, he's thriving. But I think mainly because he's not been given as much defensive duties. I think when Arsene Wenger signed him, I think he might be the only. Maybe him and now Nenny might be the only Arsene Wenger signings left in the squad. But when Arsene Wenger signed him, I think he thought he was going to sign him as his new number 6, as his new holding midfield player. He played a similar role at Borussia Mönchengladbach. He wasn't really an 8. He was more number 6. But I think adapting to the Premier League and Arteta's obviously coached him to play that kind of role. He's really, really thriving off it. And I think because he has, the likes of Thomas Partey behind him for that bit of extra security, he's given more license to go forward. And he's always had a wand of a left foot. He's always had a good shot on him. He's always had a good passing range. So going forward, when he gets into those positions more times, I'm not really surprised he's scoring goals now. I'm not really surprised he's picking up the assists. But it's just, I think, the energy and the mobility, I think, is the most surprising thing about him at the moment. And, kudos to him. A lot of Arsenal fans thought he was going to leave the club a couple of years ago when we obviously had that incident at the Emirates and he was booed off. I think wrongfully so. I'd never personally boo my own players, but he was having a torrid game. I think it was against Crystal Palace, and he got taken off, I think, by Unai Emery, and he got booed off by the fans, and he started cupping his ears. He started, sarcastically applauding, and that's when he lost his captaincy. And now he's back in the captaincy group. He's not the main captain. Martin Odegaard's the captain, but him and Gabriel Jesus are now part of the new captaincy group. And it's honestly, it's a really fascinating story. He's a revelation, and he says he's undroppable at the moment as well. A lot of Arsenal fans were calling for a new number 8 in the summer, especially when we were linked, to the likes of Yuri Tielemans from Leicester. But Granit Xhaka this season is undroppable at the moment. He's playing a lot like he does for Switzerland, where he's the main guy for Switzerland, especially in that midfield. And we're finally starting to see that kind of form at Arsenal, and it honestly it's really, really, really nice to see. And he's got his own chant now as well. He did an interview over the weekend with Zinchenko, I think, and he kind of made a joke that we'd already made a song, but Xhaka hadn't had a chant for 6 years. He said it's been at this club 6 years and he hadn't had a chant, and now we've got a chant for him, which I think shows how much he's won the fans over. And honestly, he's been absolutely brilliant this season, arguably one of, if not player of the season at the moment, just by the level of how he's improved.
Yeah, no, it's been a remarkable turnaround for him, really is. And I think those late runs that he's making pretty intelligently as well. I think that's one thing I'm going to be looking at on the weekend. I think it's one thing that maybe would surprise sort of opposition fans when they think about Liverpool and Jurgen Klopp Liverpool is that sometimes the midfielders in Liverpool's team just really do not bother, actually, weirdly, to track runners from midfield. There's a couple that do. Thiago does. Fabinho does sometimes, I think, as well when he's not knackered. Gini Wijnaldum certainly did as well, but Milner, Hendo, they're not really doing it anymore. Whether it's just too much ground to cover, whatever it might be. They're not the most defensively minded players anyway. But that's a key theme I'm looking at on the weekend, where I can imagine seeing Xhaka run off one of them and having an effort free in the box. I'm hoping that doesn't happen. I'm hoping we do get a sort of blast from the past performance where he sees red or something like that. But we'll see. He's certainly improved massively. And I mean, were there other players there that I've not mentioned that you think really deserve a mention so far this season in terms of who's been the key players for you?
I think there are probably one or two unsung heroes. I think one you probably have to mention is probably Ben White, who I was, singing his praises earlier, but he's a player that I don't think gets enough credit, for what, especially this season, for his performances. He's a player who's playing out position, and he's still overlapping Saka when he needs to. He's been relatively solid defensively. Obviously it helps having Saliba next to him, but he's keeping Tomiyasu out of the side at the moment, and Tomiyasu was one of our most consistent players last season. It's a brilliant signing, and he can't get in the team at the moment because
I was going to
say,
just on Ben White, sorry to jump in there, but like as you mentioned, centre back playing right back. I mean, sometimes you used to see these centre backs when they get dragged out into those wide positions. Obviously, this time he's actually starting there, but when they get dragged out into those positions, they sometimes look far more vulnerable than they are sort of when they're in the centre of defence. And I just wanted to ask him, as well as he's doing, I mean, how do you think he'll fare against somebody like Luis Diaz, for example, or how has he fared against tricky wingers who've run at him to date?
I mean, I rate Luis Diaz very highly, so I think he might have a tough game. I think, as poor as Liverpool have been this season by their standards, I think Luis Diaz has probably been one of the standout players, probably attacking players, and we know what Luis Diaz can do. And I think if Liverpool are going to get something out of the game, I think that is probably an area to target for them. But Ben White has been very solid this season. I think against trickier wingers, especially wingers with a lot of pace that run in behind, I think he can be susceptible to that. He struggled a little bit against Zaha in the opening game of the season on that Zaha's left, his right hand side. Zaha kept getting in quite a lot when Joachim Andersen kept putting the ball over the top from centre back, and he sort of got beat a couple of times. But I give that as sort of opening day nerves, and we ended up winning the game anyway. But all in all, Ben White's solid, and I think being a centre back by trade, he's going to have that extra sort of defensive awareness anyway. He might drop back a little bit, and the way we play, White doesn't tend to get forward too much. We tend to play sort of three at the back in possession, where we have those three natural centre backs. Then whoever's at left back, whether it's Zinchenko or Tierney, will sort of move into midfield, and then obviously we've got Granit Xhaka. So when the left back goes into midfield, that's when Xhaka sort of bombs forwards, because he's got that player to cover him. And Arteta's tactics and system is another conversation, but it's just fascinating, and it's very, very similar to Man City, and Guardiola's style of play. He's obviously learned a lot from him, and the sort of moving parts are really fascinating to watch. And Ben White's a big part of that, because he does tend to stay back a little bit more than the left back on the other side. But I think I think this season, I think Ben White's probably been one of, if not the biggest unsung hero in the team. I think Martin Ødegaard as well is a player that, for some reason, doesn't get as much praise, I don't think, from Arsenal fans as he should. He's a player that doesn't really, if I use the term stat pad, like he's not really someone who will get tons of goals and tons of assists like the wide players and the strikers do, but he's always finding that pre-assist. He's such a clever player. He's probably the best passer in the team for me. He always finds the ball through the eye of a needle, and he's a player that if we start to dictate the game and really get going, it'll be all through him. And he, as captain, he leads this young team very well, being young himself. So I think, in terms of not obvious names, I'd probably say White and Ødegaard are probably a little bit underrated. I'd say probably by Arsenal fans. I don't know whether the wider sort of community, other fan groups feel the same, but the fact of the matter is everyone's playing well for us at the moment. There's not one player, I don't think, who's had a bad season so far, and it's just so refreshing to see us be this consistent, especially at the start of the season and especially in the lead up to such a big game.
Absolutely. No, yeah, I think Arsenal definitely come into this game despite their record. Actually, no, so it's at the Emirates, isn't it? But yeah, I mean, they come into this game on top form, expecting a pretty horrendous atmosphere to try and deal with. Everybody pushing in the same direction, as you mentioned, the players full of confidence. On that, I mean, what have been for you some of the standout games that you'd highlight in terms of some of the performances that you've seen, or games that sort of showcase, you think, how when everything clicks, that's how Mikel Arteta Arsenal side this season looks like?
Well, I think Tottenham at the weekend is an obvious one to point out because it's against your biggest rivals, and aside from one or two breaks that Tottenham did have, we dominated that game. Possession-wise, I think we had tripled the amount of shots that they had, and we really stamped our authority on that game. And we were at it from the get-go. Got an early goal. I think a big difference for us from this season to last season is we are getting a lot more early goals now. We're getting a lot more goals in the first half. We're really starting games off really well. And last season it didn't really, or maybe more the season before that, it didn't really feel like that, where we weren't starting quickly. And if you get one or two goals up in the first half, you've always got a good chance of winning games. So I think we're a lot fitter now as a team as well. I think you can tell by our energy, and we don't tend to tail off games as much as we used to, especially in the 70th, 80th minute. We tended to get a lot tired, and it was difficult for us because we were under the cosh. But I think the Tottenham game's obviously a standout, and one that might surprise people is the only game we've dropped points this season, which was United at Old Trafford.
Yeah.
I thought over the course of the whole game, I thought we were very unlucky to lose that game.
Yeah, me too.
I thought we were the better team throughout the game. I think we were unlucky not to get that VAR decision for us in the first 10 minutes or so, which could have easily changed the game. If we get that early goal, then it would settle our nerves. And, every Arsenal fan will tell you, no matter how badly you think United are doing at the moment, we historically just have an awful record at Old Trafford, and we always tend to freeze, no matter where we are in comparison to them. And of course it was a shame to lose the game, but honestly, before it went 3-1, we could have been winning 3-1. Like we had so many good chances, and we dominated the ball as we have done in every game this season. And I think the fact that Arteta got a little bit of criticism for making those, 3 big attacking changes, to really, really go for that win after we got the equaliser, and United sucker punched us twice on the break. But I think that was just testament to really how easy we were finding it. We were finding it almost too easy at times, and Arteta had faith and confidence and just said, you know what, we're going to bring all these attacking players on, and we're really going to go and win that game because we've had enough chances. And yeah, we got hit on the break, unfortunately. But I'd say in terms of standouts, I think the Tottenham game obviously is a derby. Every Arsenal fan will tell you that beating Tottenham is better almost than beating anybody else in this league, even the likes of Man City and Liverpool. Everyone wants to win that game, and I think, the United game especially, to dominate as much as we did at Old Trafford is, a testament to how well we've played, and we really should have got a result there. We should really be 8 from 8, but we're 7 from 8. We're still top of the league, so we obviously go into this weekend's game with a lot of confidence, and this for me is going to be our biggest challenge yet. Even if Liverpool aren't quite at it or aren't quite at the level that we know they can be, this for me is the biggest challenge yet, because we know how capable Liverpool are when they are on song, and even if 90% of the players turn up, it's going to be a difficult game. So it's one to really look forward to, definitely, for a neutral anyway.
Yeah, no, I think, I'm delighted that certain players are back. I'm delighted that Diego Jota managed to regain fitness in time for this game. He's obviously had a good record at the Emirates, and was sort of very useful for us last season. I think the issue for Liverpool in all the games, I'm not sure how many you've seen, is just, it was evident last season as well, as controlling games on the ball, and sort of not necessarily doing that now that some of the players are unable to do physically what they used to do a couple of years ago, where they just control the game through, they control the space, the pressing. We don't press anywhere near the same way anymore, and I think that's because there's some key cogs in that team, particularly in the engine room, who just can't get about the pitch in the same way anymore. So still other ways to do things, and obviously Thiago being back is a massive plus as well. So I'm interested to see how we line up for that game, because of all the teams that had players that could find pop up in half spaces, drifting all over the place, lots of movement, lots of fluidity. Arsenal are very much an example of that this season, so it's going to be a real challenge of how disciplined Liverpool can be, I think, and then trying to be clever on the counter, use some of that experience. But in terms of how you think the game's going to go, I mean, as you're sort of leading up to it there, I imagine there's not going to be any amending of tactics for this game from Arteta. This is going to be, we're top of the league, we're full of confidence. You'll come into our ground, and we're going to go at you.
Yeah, I expect that fully. I think last season he didn't believe as much that he had the squad to sort of compete with the likes of City and Liverpool. I remember him starting off with 5 at the back away at the Etihad early in the season, and we got torn apart. We got a red card in the first half, but Arteta doesn't usually change his style of play, his philosophy, and he did for that game. And now I think he's got that much faith in his squad. This I think now is a fully Arteta squad. This, especially our starting 11, is what he would love. Is exactly the kind of team I think he'd like on paper. And yeah, I think on current form, and with us being top of the league and Liverpool being not quite at it as much as they probably should be, he's not going to change for this game. We're going to hopefully start well again, start quickly, try and get on the front foot, use our energy, because that's one thing you get with a young squad that we've got, as well as how good of a player they are. They've got so much energy on the pitch, and something that Liverpool have been renowned for over the last few years is their pressing and their energy and their running stats. But I think we've got that now in our squad, and I'm expecting us to give Liverpool a tough game. But as I keep saying, Liverpool are Liverpool at the end of the day. You don't become a bad team overnight. And if Liverpool are even 90-95% on it, it's going to be very difficult to win the game, because they've got the game changers, your Salahs, your Diaz's, and if Van Dijk's up to his usual standards, he'll be tough to get round. I do agree with the midfield element. I think what's let Liverpool down this season, personally, for me, is a midfield, and I think Thiago's been a massive mess for Liverpool. He's the one that can control the game. He's the one that can dictate things from midfield, and when he has been missing, when you've had the likes of Henderson, James Milner, other players in there as well, it's just not quite the same.
No. Yeah.
When you have a lot of similar players, I think, in midfield, it's not quite the same machine that you used there. I think Thiago just has that extra guile that Liverpool have been missing over the years, maybe. And I think Thiago's a massive boost for them. But I still think each of our midfield players, Partey, Xhaka, Ødegaard, they've all been brilliant this season, and if we continue to play at our best, we'll do very well, I think, in the game. And as I said, it's going to be a fascinating watch, I think, for the neutral. But obviously it depends what teams turn up. If both teams turn up, then we could see a very high scoring game, I think, which will be interesting viewing.
Yeah, I think actually one player that's probably gone under the radar for Liverpool this season, given how they've been doing, just Alisson, just been incredible. I think if it wasn't for him, I think things would be substantially worse, because they're just they're just not controlling the games from midfield anymore. So I think it's I'm hoping for a 4-2-3-1 from Liverpool this weekend, because I think it showed signs of being a little bit better. Because obviously when you're in a 2, you can't go abandoning your position, because you literally got no one behind you. So it sort of forces the discipline in a way. So yeah, hoping for Fab and Thiago in there, and Jota probably coming in to help them a little bit by dropping deep. So we'll see. I wonder if Nunez will get an outing as well. I think he's unlucky not to score last night. It looks like he's starting to put things together as well. So it'd be exciting to see how he gets deployed as well. But anyway, Adam, I mean, thanks so much for all the insight. Just one question before I let you go is, so I guess, top of the league at this stage in the season, flying. I better ask you now, what are your expectations for the season?
Good question. For me, it's personally, it's still top 4. For me, before the season, it was top 4. For me, get back in that Champions League, that's all we've been wanting. And I know a lot of Arsenal fans might be a bit more optimistic than I am, and might think we're in a title race, which they can think that, but for me it's still very early in the season, and it might be different for some Liverpool fans, but I do expect Liverpool to pick up eventually, whether that will be after the World Cup or maybe before it. But also, Man City still look like the animal that they have been over the few years, and with Haaland up front, they can, they don't even have to play well, and they can guarantee 2 or 3 goals per game.
Yeah,
so if we were to finish above Man City, then we'd be doing very well. Let's just say that. And as I said, with Liverpool, they're in a bad place at the moment, just purely because of the standards that they've set themselves. They've been absolutely incredible, Liverpool, to even be on City's tails for the past few years. Incredible. Not quite at it this season, but I'm still expecting a tough test on Sunday. And for Arsenal, every season, in the current state that we've been in with the club, every season it's top 4 in the cup for me, until we can really truly believe that we can get back to being title contenders, which I still think might be another season, maybe another season or 2 away. But we've got the squad is young. The squad's got so much potential at the moment that we're only going to get better. We're not going to get worse, I don't think, from here. And if any team's going to challenge City for those titles over the next few years, I'd be quietly confident that it could be us, because we've got those players that could really, really grow into top world-class players over the next few years. And it's really exciting at the moment. Being an Arsenal fan, it's a lot different to what we were perhaps 3 or 4 years ago or so. But yeah, for me, for now, I'd say top 4 still. But if it gets to around March, April, and we're still up there, then maybe we can dream about a first Premier League title since the Invincible season. But it's going to be tough. But if you offered us top 4 and a trophy at the start of the season, every Arsenal fan would have snapped your hand off. So it's going to be interesting for sure.
Yeah, a couple of interesting games coming up, obviously, around sort of proving those credentials. As you say, Liverpool, even sort of this sort of beleaguered version of Liverpool, and then City as well. Obviously, it'd be great if you can just take points off them, demoralise Haaland, some sort of existential crisis, whatever he needs to go through to not be doing what he's doing right now. We'll take anything we can get. I'm sure the rest of the league feels the same way. But Adam, thanks so much for coming on, and just for sharing your perspective on Arsenal this season. And to all those who've been listening, so obviously another Rival Recon as these games really come thick and fast. What's that? A game every 2 days now, it seems like, for the foreseeable future. And the next episode doesn't get any easier, of course. I think the Reds pretty much have to put it together in these next 2 games. Otherwise, I think there's a real risk that they get battered, because the next game is obviously Manchester City as well after Arsenal. So there'll be another episode ahead of that game. But between now and then, do listen to all the other great content on Anfield Index Pro. And yeah, we'll see you before that trip, or Man City's trip to Anfield, rather.
We hope you enjoyed listening to this Anfield Index show. Please be sure to subscribe to our channel so future podcasts find their way to your device automatically. There's nothing quite like fan engagement, and we'd love to know what you think of anything discussed on this show. The best way to get in touch is over on our free Discord community, where both podcasters and listeners debate the hottest LFC topics 24/7. Sign up free now at AnfieldIndex.com/Discord. You won't regret it. You can also follow us on Twitter at Anfield Index, and find us on Facebook by searching for Anfield Index. Oh, and before you go, we'd love it if you could leave us a 5-star review on your favourite podcast app. It only takes a couple of seconds, and it means the world to the people who create these free shows.